brown shirt, and he came up to me, and I was wearing a Bill shirt, and he's like, "Hey, that was our only win of the year." So it was kind of bittersweet, but it was good. But thank you for the very nice introduction. It sounded more impressive, I guess, than I could have put together. But thank you very much for the privilege of being invited back to Houghton tonight. It's been a while. Thanks, Professor Bates and Elaine and Molly, Bryce. I know these things don't just happen. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Campus looks beautiful. Every time I come, I basically make a beeline to my Aunt Barb and Uncle John's house, Van Wicklen, so I don't see the campus as much as I probably should. But and the food was delicious, as it always is, as I remember from about 20 pounds ago. I used to power chow here pretty good. So, but the college was nice enough to invite my wife and daughters, and I thank you for that. They weren't able to be here. My wife's a teacher, as Professor Bates mentioned. And not just any teacher. She is, I'm not just saying this, I know it's subjective, but she's one of the best teachers in Western New York. There are some people who are just born to do something. She was born to be a teacher, and Houghton really gave her, accelerated that. But I can't tell you how many times I've had someone come up to me in Western New York and say, "What's your last name? Purdy?" And say, "Oh, Mrs. Purdy, yeah, my kid had her. She was the best teacher we ever had." And principals are fighting over, and pretty impressive. And I have a daughter who's a sophomore at West Seneca West High School. She's a feisty little three-sport athlete. She couldn't be here tonight because she has basketball practice. And a 10-year-old in 5th grade who is our comedian of the family, pretty much. So they would have loved to be here, but maybe another time. So someone in my position at the Bills isn't usually called upon to speak publicly. Every team, every professional sports team pretty much has what's called a media relations department, and they're there to kind of craft a unified message for the team. Even when you hear a player or a coach speak, usually one of those guys or ladies is right behind them trying to help craft like a unified message. So in my position, it's usually more behind the scenes. The last time I was asked to speak was actually a friend of my daughter's was at the middle school, and she knew I worked for the Bills, and she said, "Would you mind coming to talk to our class?" Or I forget how she said it. "Talk to the Honor Society, about your job." I said, "Oh, sure, no problem." And it was a couple days before the event. I got a call at home from the assistant principal of the school, and they said, "Yeah, Mr. Purdy, we're thrilled to have you come speak with us, and we'd like you to get there an hour early and wear a black suit, and it'll be a full auditorium." I'm like, "Okay." And I hung up, and I went to Anna. I said, "Anna, did you know about this?" She goes, "Oh yeah, it's a big deal, and it's mostly girls too." And I'm like, "Oh man." So I'm thinking I have to cram. I got pretty good at cramming at Houghton, so fortunately I had that. But to put something together that stood a chance of being, remotely interesting to middle school, mostly girls, and I turned out okay, I guess. A parent came to me afterwards, a father, and said, "I usually fall asleep at these things, but I didn't tonight." So I guess that set the bar kind of low, but I'll take that. That's fine. But at work, I usually speak really just twice during the year to the team. Basically, the rookies, when they come in May, I'll get them in a room. It'll be someone like me, our director of security, our director of player relations, and we just kind of explain to them, because they're hit with so much at once. We explain to them, my job is to explain to them, how their pay works, which is quite different than in a traditional job, and what to do if they get injured, not if, when they get injured. And they usually retain most of it, but then I speak to the entire team excuse me, the week before, once the final roster is announced, the 53-man roster is announced, the week before the regular season game, I'll speak to the whole team also about their pay. It's review for a lot of the guys, but I have, coach gives me 15 minutes to speak, not 16, 15 minutes to speak. I usually have from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8:15. At 8, usually our special teams coach, Bobby April, is standing in the corner, and he's going to start speaking at 8:15, so I have to be done. It's not optional, but it's really hard to find a more attentive audience than the players, and I guess when you're threatened with a $500 fine for being disruptive, that tends to make sure you pay attention. But my current job duties, as Professor Bates was mentioning, I serve the football side of the organization, not marketing or tickets or the stadium areas, but coaching, scouting, the players to a degree, trainers. Basically, all those people come to a football team with a very specific, special set of skills. And so it's my job to take as much administratively off their plate as I possibly can to free them up so they have as much time as possible to do what they were brought in to do and ultimately help us win, hopefully. It's just always better when you win. There's definitely a sense of pride. There's also financial rewards for the staff that make the playoffs, which used to be a given, but it's been a long time. It's been a long drought that hopefully we can end here pretty soon. But for example, for the trainers, I'm responsible for much of their paperwork. Every time you see a player come off the field with an injury, that's a big project for me because it's a workers' comp claim. It's workers' compensation. That man was hurt on the job. So it's nobody likes to see injuries, but nobody more so than me. So I pretend I feel bad for them, but basically, so I have to coordinate the records between the attorneys and the state, and believe it or not, if they even have an agent who's from the state of California, then the state of California is so whacked that their workers' comp laws supersede anything in New York, and that takes over, and we have a workers' comp attorney in the state of California that I'm in constant contact with. So that's one of the things I do. I oversee some aspects of team travel. Tomorrow at this time I'll be in our hotel in Tennessee. So it's fun being on the team plane for sure, but that's also 8 regular season games, 2 road preseason, plus the Toronto game. That's like 11 weekends out of the year that I'm away. So it's good and it's bad. Work with player contracts, and anytime a player is signed, there is a hard copy of a contract that looks like the Magna Carta. Pretty much it's this gigantic document full of legalese and amendments and incentives, and basically I have to take that contract and cut and paste it. That's where cut and pasting is good. Don't do it in college, but it's okay where I have to do it, and put that formatted into an electronic contract and send that to the league office. And then the league office takes it and they upload it into a website that every other team can see that contract. And likewise, somebody at all the other teams does the same thing. They'll send their contract in, and then we can all look at their contracts. And the league does it. It's kind of an interesting, I don't know what you call it, but we're all competitors as teams, but we're also in the same league. We're also in the same management, and it's a goal of every team cumulatively to try to keep player costs down. So the Players Union has their own thing to do, which I'm always reminded of, but that's how we do it. So I do negotiate contracts. My boss is our senior Vice President of Football Administration, Jim Overdorf. You may have heard the name, but he is truly one of the best contract negotiators in the NFL, and he's a lawyer. He's not a guy that likes to put himself out there that much, but he's tremendous at what he does. So he'll usually do the top draft picks, the top free